Okay, Cody, let's go in terms of just things smacking me in the face. Also, I was like, oh crap, draft is next week.
I got here quick.
And and it's becoming an increasingly heavy part of our podcast. And I went to one of the games I went to this week, the Wednesday game, the Joey Wentz game. Was I went with some of the guys from college, and like I still play like softball with all these years later. And one of them is like a huge LSU fan. I know we went to Oklahoma State, but he grew up in Baton Rouge, so he's a huge LSU fan. And so he congrats to LSU Tigers on winning the College World Series. It looked like I think it was one of the heavily rated College World Series in recent years. It was
It
a lot of fun.
was. Yeah.
Langford had a moment or two. Like, yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch. He said he heard, and this is a guy that would be on message boards. So wherever it's worth,
Very official information.
wherever it's worth. But he said that he heard. He's like, I'm not sure Pittsburgh's going Cruz. They want. I think he said the Pirates want Cruz to take less, to go under slot, and Cruz has been resistant to that idea. So maybe this automatic 1-2-3 that we think is going to happen, maybe this really does have a wild card element to this draft. So that becomes, what does Washington do?
Right.
Does Washington, who the whole time has had Skeens, kind of slotted there? Is it possible, Cody? Is it possible? Can we dream? Can Cruz fall to 3? Is that something that could? Or I'll say this. Let me ask this: can Cruz fall to 3? And then is there a prep pitcher that's going to come in and kind of swoop in at the last second, asking for a friend?
I think there's zero chance the Tigers will take a prep pitcher at 3 this year. That one I say with confidence. Everything else here, I'm a little bit between message boards and reporting this as fact, but there's a lot of draft buzz in the industry right now, and I've certainly heard the exact same thing about Cruz. That seems to be the idea that Pittsburgh's trying to go under slot, as they did with Henry Davis. Is something they like to do. And that Cruz is being like, no, why would I do that? In which case, that leaves things open a little bit. Wyatt Langford, could he go 1? Would he be willing to go under slot? Some people think so. And then the consensus for a long time has been that the Nationals are fixated on Paul Skeens. We will see if that one bodes true, but I don't know if I've seen anyone disagree with that idea. So things seem to be going well for the Tigers here, as long as they don't mess it up and take Kyle Teal, who I'm sure is a fine ball player. But before it was like, all right, you're going to get Langford or Cruz, and now it's like the Tigers could walk away with the guy most people consider the best player in this entire draft class. Which, if you go back to the draft lottery in San Diego, when you saw Rob Metzler, like not really sure if he was allowed to smile or not, as the Tigers got bumped up a couple extra spots in the inaugural MLB draft lottery, that's starting to seem like a great fortuitous break. A lot probably still to happen here in this next week, but if I'm the Tigers right now, if I'm Scott Harris, if I'm Rob Metzler, I'm thinking, all right, I think we can crack a smile a little bit. I think this is going a direction we like.
It's so funny. Like Pittsburgh has a chance to take the general number 1 overall player, like the consensus number 1 overall player, obviously had in the first pick, or the best pitching prospect since Steven Strasburg. Could they pass on both?
It's not like Langford is like much of a drop, if any, from Cruz, though.
You're right.
That is probably a little bit of the thinking there.
Yeah, that'd be absolutely wild, because Keith Law, friend of the podcast, just put out another mock. I don't know if it's going to be his last. I think it was his third.
Does one more.
Yeah, probably does one more, because, like I said, the buzz is obviously only going to grow as we approach Sunday. He had Skeens going 1 to Pittsburgh, and then Cruz falling all the way to 2.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he had Skeens to Pittsburgh, Cruz going right there at 2, and he had. So it's basically the consensus top 3 that we read in every mock just flipped 1 and 2. And then he had Langford going 3rd to the Tigers. But he did say that I'll quote him right here. I've heard weird rumblings that the Tigers are considering Kyle Teal or another college player who might take a deal here. He says he likes Teal, but he's not at the level of Langford or either of the high
Yeah.
school outfielders.
Yeah.
That'd be Clark or
And
Jenkins.
and this is one I have still heard pretty much nothing from actual Tigers people about their thoughts on Kyle Teal. There's been some buzz, some outside speculation that it's like more of a plan B if something weird happens. Maybe the prep guy or the Cruz and Langford somehow go 1-2. But I wish I felt a little more like assured that that's the case. And I'm gonna be honest, sitting right here today, there's one thing you want to be reason to tune into the draft and maybe even be a little bit nervous. It's that I'm not 1,000% sure what the deal is there.
It's a strange situation overall, and
I would say, as much as I don't like the move, for those who are afraid of drafting pitchers, it's probably very good that the Tigers are doing due diligence on another prep or college bat. One thing I think we can feel confident they really want a college bat, which generally is a great draft strategy that people like.
yeah. Well,
they're just not going to like it if you pass on someone else to get a catcher.
Well, let's talk about let's say Cruz and Langford go 1 and 2 in some order. And you got Paul Skeens right there. And you've worked out Max Clark. We all know you worked out Max Clark. I assume you worked out Jenkins. There's a Kyle Teal in the air. What are people going to be more comfortable with? I think I'll say it right here. I think in that circumstance, I'd probably take Skeens. As much as I am Mr. Anti-pitcher, I just don't know if the two best players in the draft positionally go, and then the generational pitching prospect, and I get to say for the rest of my life on my resume, I passed on him. I
would be very, very curious to know what they actually think of Clark and Jenkins, though. I think those guys are pretty good.
I mean, they're as hyped as I can remember. Like, it's so weird, like the groupings of this draft. Like, and I think one of the best things that you said a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about this Kyle Teal buzz was, in a different draft, this would make a lot of sense with the outfield talent, both prep and college available. And I think you also, if you're Scott Harris, you got to keep in mind, like, this is Scott doesn't have the history of the Detroit Tigers wearing on him in terms of the draft, and misses and consequences and all that stuff. So if he thinks Skeens is the best player available at that time, he's going to take him, he's not going to not take him because Tigers fans have anxiety over pitching prospects and pitchers in the major leagues. He's gonna have to have
right.
Like that's how it works, man. And again, if you just want to play it out, like if this guy reaches somewhat level of his potential, a Skeens, Skubal, I mean, who knows with Mize, who knows with Manning, but if you can have Skeens and Skubal at the top in 2 years, like that's a good start. And then you fill it in with free agents, or Mize develops into a pitcher that, we think he's capable of, or Manning. You don't feel so bad about Matt Manning if you have Paul Skeens developing at the rate. And then who knows, maybe Jackson Jobe turns into a guy. And all of a sudden,
he still could. Jackson Jobe, by the way, is back and throwing in Lakeland a little quicker than people might have thought, so can't just write off Jackson Jobe because he had a back injury. Think back to spring training, people are like, oh, Jobe's made some real progress. And then the injury came along.
What did I say? Like I don't know, maybe we both said it or whatever a couple weeks ago. The bottom line is you have the 3rd overall pick. You have a chance to take a stud. I'm not saying Kyle Teal's not a stud, but when you have all these other options available, like, I think you got to go with the higher profile guy. unless you just really have something good going, to use that money to go under slot later or whatever.
I agree. I mean, you either take Skeens or I really, really like Max Clark, and I haven't seen him in person ever once, so I'm not going to just like beat the table for him, but I would take Skeens or Max Clark before I took Kyle Teal, if that were me.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought there would it's so funny, like I don't have like a guy that I'm like in love with, like I had the previous couple years. But it's not because I don't like think all these guys are could be great or whatever. It's just because it has been so just like routine to see Langford slot at 3. So you're just kind of like, oh, all right, well, look at Langford. I think Langford's awesome. That'd be a great pick. But like, it wouldn't be like cool to be like, oh yeah, you gotta draft Langford. It's like, yeah,
Right.
well, everyone else kind of thinks that too. Well, way to be an original content creator. but but I think we could be in for some good drama. And let's just say Cruz does fall to 3, the Tigers take him. And that's another thing too I'm also curious about is could the Tigers be caught off guard by Cruz falling to 3? Like is
Well, they shouldn't be. Hey, Scott Harris, don't be caught off guard. This is one possibility. There, problem solved.
What I mean is that like they wouldn't have as much homework done or whatever on him as opposed to, let's just say, like Clark or
If they
whatever.
haven't had someone stationed in Baton Rouge for the past year, they were doing it wrong.
That's true. They should have had someone in Baton Rouge the entire time. But I guess I mean, like, you don't think he's going to be there. All of a sudden he is there. But what if you made a promise? I guess is kind of what I'm really getting at. And if you're Scott Harris, are you in your first draft? Are you going to go back on a promise to another like player slash agent? Because all these guys probably have like the big time agents. That could happen. I'm just saying it's on the board. It's on the board to happen. So Tigers could get Cruz, and all of a sudden the draft lottery becomes a lot of fun. An idea that is
I'm not going to make fun of it as much next year.
you're not going to have the opportunity to.